The little boy stood in the pouring afternoon rain, desperately trying to shield his father with a broken umbrella while strangers hurried past without even looking. A luxury car slowed for only a moment before driving away, splashing muddy water across the sidewalk. The father simply smiled, wiped the mud from his son's tiny shoes with his own handkerchief, and whispered something that made the child laugh despite the storm. Hidden inside another car parked across the street, a woman worth billions watched through tear-filled eyes. She had spent years believing that money revealed people's true character. That afternoon, she discovered that sometimes it was poverty or what appeared to be poverty that revealed the greatest hearts of all. Before we begin, if you believe kindness is more valuable than money and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel name. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories like this one. Serafina Vale had everything the world admired and nothing that made her feel truly alive. At 38 years old, she was the founder of one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the country, the owner of several luxurious homes, and a familiar face on magazine covers that celebrated success. Yet every evening, after the business meetings ended and the applause faded, she returned to a penthouse that echoed with silence. The expensive artwork hanging on the walls could not fill the emptiness that had quietly grown inside her over the years. Her success had come at a painful cost. After growing up in a struggling household, Serafina promised herself she would never again depend on anyone. She worked through endless nights, sacrificed friendships, and walked away from relationships whenever she suspected people loved her fortune more than her heart. The wealth that had once represented freedom slowly became a prison she could not escape. Every introduction felt suspicious. Every compliment carried hidden motives. Every date became another disappointment. Eventually, one of her oldest friends convinced her to try something unusual. Instead of attending exclusive social events where everyone already knew her name, she should sign up for a private blind date service using only her first name and a simple profile. Better yet, she should pretend to live an ordinary life. If someone appreciated her without knowing her fortune, perhaps she could finally trust again. At first, the idea sounded ridiculous. But loneliness often persuades people to attempt things they once considered impossible. On the other side of the city lived Rowan Mercer, a 42-year-old widowed father raising his 8-year-old son, Milo. Rowan worked as a maintenance supervisor at a small community center. His hands were rough from repairing broken pipes, fixing playground equipment, and painting classrooms that children would fill with laughter the next morning. His paycheck barely covered rent, groceries, and school supplies, but he never complained. 5 years earlier, Rowan had buried his wife after a sudden illness stole her away in only a few months. Since then, every decision he made revolved around giving Milo a childhood filled with warmth instead of grief. They could not afford vacations or expensive toys, but they collected memories instead. They watched sunsets from neighborhood parks, built homemade kites, baked simple cakes on birthdays, and celebrated every small victory as though it were a miracle. The dating service paired Serafina and Rowan based on shared values rather than financial backgrounds. Neither knew much about the other except that both had experienced profound loneliness and hoped to meet someone genuine. Serafina deliberately dressed in inexpensive clothing, borrowed an older compact car from one of her employees, and removed every visible sign of luxury. She wanted to know whether someone could appreciate her without the glitter of wealth surrounding her. When she arrived at the small neighborhood cafe where they had agreed to meet, she expected awkward conversation and forced smiles. Instead, she found Rowan waiting outside because he had arrived early. He noticed an elderly woman struggling to carry heavy grocery bags across the street. Without hesitation, he excused himself from the cafe entrance, carried every bag to her apartment building, and returned only after making sure she reached her door safely. He had no audience. No cameras. No expectation of praise. He simply helped because someone needed help. Serafina watched quietly, saying nothing. Their conversation flowed more naturally than either expected. Rowan spoke passionately about repairing old playgrounds because every child deserved a safe place to laugh. He described Milo's curiosity about the stars, his habit of asking impossible questions, and his dream of becoming an inventor. He never once complained about the hardships of single parenthood. Instead, he talked about gratitude, resilience, and finding joy in ordinary moments. Serafina found herself smiling more than she had in years. When the bill arrived, Rowan insisted on paying despite clearly calculating every dollar carefully before handing over his worn wallet. She noticed the edges held together with tape. She offered to split the cost, but he gently refused, explaining that if he invited someone out, he believed it was his responsibility to honor that invitation. She had attended dinners costing thousands of dollars where wealthy men boasted endlessly about themselves. Yet somehow this simple meal, shared with a man who possessed almost nothing materially, felt more meaningful than every expensive evening she had ever experienced. Over the next several weeks, they continued meeting. Instead of luxury restaurants, Rowan suggested community festivals, botanical gardens with inexpensive admission, and quiet lakeside walks where conversation mattered more than surroundings. Serafina discovered a world she had almost forgotten existed, a world where happiness depended less on possessions and more on presence. Then she met Milo. The little boy welcomed her without hesitation, proudly showing her a birdhouse he and his father had built from leftover wood. It leaned slightly to one side, and the paint was uneven, but Milo treated it like a masterpiece. While Rowan prepared sandwiches in the tiny kitchen, Milo quietly admitted that he sometimes worried his father worked too hard. "He always says we're rich," Milo whispered. "Not because we have money. Because we still have each other." Those innocent words settled deeply inside Serafina's heart. For years she had measured success through numbers displayed on financial reports. This child measured wealth through love. One Saturday afternoon, Serafina secretly followed Rowan after he mentioned needing to run errands before meeting her. She expected grocery shopping or paying bills. Instead, she watched him stop at a small bakery. Unable to afford fresh pastries for himself, Rowan purchased several discounted loaves of bread nearing their expiration date. Rather than taking them home, he walked directly to a nearby shelter where volunteers welcomed him warmly. Apparently, he did this every weekend. He spent 2 hours serving meals, repairing broken shelves, and entertaining children while their parents rested. No photographs. No recognition. No publicity. Just quiet kindness. That evening, Serafina returned to her penthouse unable to sleep. She stared at the city lights stretching endlessly beyond her windows. For years she had donated millions to charities through corporate foundations. Her name appeared on plaques and annual reports celebrating generosity. Yet watching Rowan quietly serve strangers without expecting gratitude made her question whether she truly understood compassion at all. She had given from abundance. He gave from sacrifice. Days later, another unexpected moment changed everything. While walking together downtown, they encountered a homeless veteran sitting outside a pharmacy. Rowan recognized him immediately, greeted him by name, and disappeared inside the store. When he returned, he carried medicine, bottled water, warm socks, and enough groceries for several days. Serafina later discovered Rowan had spent nearly half the money intended for his own weekly food budget. When she asked why, he smiled softly. He explained that hunger became easier to bear when you knew someone else wasn't facing it alone. Those words shattered something inside her. For the first time in years, Serafina cried after returning home. Not because she felt sad. Because she realized how emotionally poor she had become despite unimaginable wealth. Meanwhile, Rowan remained unaware of her true identity. He admired her intelligence, kindness, and willingness to appreciate simple experiences. He believed she understood his life because she never complained about ordinary restaurants or inexpensive outings. He had no idea she owned buildings taller than anything visible from their neighborhood. As weeks turned into months, Serafina faced an impossible decision. Every relationship built upon honesty. Yet hers had begun with deception. She feared revealing the truth would destroy everything they had created. Her greatest fear became reality sooner than expected. One afternoon, Rowan accepted an emergency maintenance job at a downtown convention center hosting a major business conference. While repairing electrical equipment backstage, he glanced toward a massive presentation screen. His heart nearly stopped. The keynote speaker stepping confidently onto the stage was Serafina. Not the ordinary office worker she claimed to be. The billionaire entrepreneur whose face appeared regularly on television. He stood frozen as thousands applauded her achievements. Every secret became painfully clear. That evening, Serafina arrived at their usual meeting place carrying more anxiety than she had ever experienced. Rowan was already waiting. His expression held disappointment rather than anger. Before she could explain, he quietly admitted he already knew. Silence stretched between them. She confessed everything. She explained the loneliness, the betrayals, the endless suspicion, the fear of never knowing whether anyone loved her or merely her fortune. She admitted pretending to be ordinary had been wrong but insisted every feeling she had developed for him and Milo was completely genuine. Rowan listened without interrupting. Finally, he looked toward the playground where Milo laughed with other children. He explained that trust was difficult to build and painfully easy to lose. Not because of wealth. Because honesty mattered. Serafina accepted every word. She expected him to walk away forever. Instead, Rowan surprised her. He admitted understanding why she had hidden the truth. Life had taught both of them painful lessons. His grief taught him how suddenly love disappeared. Her success taught her how easily people wore masks. Neither wound justified deception. But both deserved compassion. Weeks passed before they saw each other again. During that time, Serafina made changes that no newspaper ever reported. Rather than announcing another massive donation, she quietly visited the community center where Rowan worked. Without attaching her name to the project, she funded renovations for children's classrooms, upgraded playground equipment, repaired the aging roof, and created scholarship programs for struggling families. When local residents asked who paid for everything, administrators simply answered that an anonymous donor believed every child deserved hope. Serafina never attended ribbon-cutting ceremonies. She wanted the kindness to matter more than the recognition. One sunny afternoon, Rowan discovered her painting a classroom alongside volunteers wearing old jeans covered in colorful paint stains. She smiled nervously. There were no security guards. No photographers. No expensive clothing. Only a woman trying to become someone worthy of the kindness she had witnessed. Rowan watched her spend hours scrubbing floors, carrying furniture, and laughing with children who had no idea who she really was. That day he finally understood something important. Her greatest wealth was no longer measured by bank accounts. It was measured by her willingness to change. Months later, Serafina invited Rowan and Milo to visit one of her office buildings. Instead of showcasing luxury, she introduced them to employees whose college educations she had secretly funded, families whose medical bills had been paid anonymously, and former interns who now led successful careers because someone believed in their potential. Rowan realized her generosity had always existed. She simply expressed it differently. Now, inspired by his example, she had begun giving not only money but also time, presence, and genuine compassion. Milo looked around in amazement before taking Serafina's hand. He asked a question only a child could ask. If you're so rich, why do you still smile the most when we're eating peanut butter sandwiches together? Serafina laughed through tears. Because those sandwiches tasted like family. A year later, the same sidewalk where they first met looked entirely different. The neglected park nearby had become a beautiful community space filled with children playing safely every afternoon. The shelter Rowan volunteered at expanded its services. Scholarships helped dozens of students pursue dreams once considered impossible. None of the buildings displayed Serafina's name. She no longer needed monuments. The lives transformed became her greatest legacy. As the afternoon sun painted golden light across the park, Rowan watched Milo race toward a newly repaired swing set. Serafina stood beside him, not as a billionaire searching for honesty, but as a woman who had finally found home. She had entered a blind date pretending to be poor because she believed money hid people's true intentions. Instead, she discovered a man whose kindness remained unchanged whether anyone was watching or not. His quiet compassion did something no amount of wealth had ever accomplished. It healed the broken places inside her heart. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to channel name. Your support allows more uplifting stories to reach people who may need them the most. Special request: before this story ends, please comment below with one simple sentence: kindness is the greatest wealth. We'd love to know how many hearts still believe this beautiful truth. Some people spend their entire lives searching for treasure in bank accounts, expensive homes, or successful careers. Others discover that the richest people are often those whose hands remain open to help strangers, whose hearts refuse to grow cold after heartbreak, and whose love asks for nothing in return. Serafina's billions could build skyscrapers, but it was Rowan's humble kindness that rebuilt a human soul. And perhaps that is the greatest reminder of all, that true wealth is never counted in dollars, but in the lives forever changed because someone chose compassion when it would have been easier to walk away. Sometimes the person who appears to have the least is quietly carrying the greatest fortune of all, and sometimes the heart that has everything is simply waiting for one act of genuine kindness to finally feel rich.